What is going on? And welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Just saw your tweet. We're going to be talking for 70 minutes how good Alex Wennberg is. From a roster construction standpoint, I don't hate the trade. From an asset management perspective, it's a pretty brutal trade, but they didn't trade it first. They're in it for a right winger. We'll see what happens. But I don't know. Wennberg with top line assignments with Burakovsky was bad, but you put him with Cooley and Kako, could be a decent defensive line. I don't know. I'm just trying to inhale all the copium about that trade right now.
Yeah, wasn't Wennberg on the fourth line at their practice this morning?
They mixed it around. He was with Cooley and VC, and then he was with Rempe and Edstrom in separate points. But I think they're trying to rebuild the fourth line, right? Because if they get a top line right winger, they can obviously move Kako down. They can move VC back to the fourth line. I don't know.
Copium.
Yeah. Me and the Leafs fans have something in common today. We're just inhaling all the copium. The Leafs just love big lefties who suck, which is awesome. So Joel Edmondson. Is Klingberg going to be back for the playoffs or no? He's just out, right?
Yeah, I think he's out. I don't even know if they'd want him back for the playoffs if he's back, but yeah, I think he's out.
I mean, Joel Edmondson brings some physicality at least to that blue line that they lack. So, unless you're Morgan Riley taking cheap shots at people after empty net goals, there's no physicality on that blue line. Anyway, our boy Saul Goodman taking down the 444 energy line yesterday with a Colorado stack. Kel McCarr with the hat trick. You were able to fit Colorado 1 and McCarr last night. I did it. I had 30 less points than Mr. G, but congrats to you. Nice to see. Always good to see your friends win. Jake the other night finished second and third in the poke check. A dude, for how good he's running awful. He's running so unlucky. He has a hot streak going. Yeah.
It's one of those things where we always joke about when we have a bad night. It's we didn't make a bad lineup. We were just on the wrong side of variance. Jake's actually on the wrong side of variance. It very few times is that actually true, and he actually is, because he's getting a lot of very high finishes. Once in a while, I think he had a showdown takedown last week or something like that. He's getting there, but it's been a lot of second and thirds for a month now. So it genuinely is a lot of bad variance, but I'm sure he'll break through, and I'm hopeful that we can get some more winners here tonight, because we do have a jam-packed 12-game slate. A lot of news, obviously, with all the trades that have gone down the last couple of days.
Yeah, I'm sure Jake will be fine. He had some profitable slates. He's got a ridiculously good jawline, so he'll be just fine. We have a 12-gamer here tonight. Again, I'm not going to rant about it, but the contests from DraftKings are just putrid. After they all filled 3 hours early on Tuesday, I'm 90% sure they did not pass middle school math and a basic economics class. But that's neither here nor there. We have 12 games to break down. But before we do, just want to say you guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much for the affiliate support through the signups, the super chats, the likes, the sharing the show, showing up in the chat in the show, all that. You guys have been incredible. We do love to see it, and helps you get all this free stuff from us. So the more you guys help us out, the more we help you out. You scratch my back, I scratch your back, if you're into that kind of stuff. I don't know. But let's get into this slate. 12-gamer. Let's start with those Maple Leafs. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 2.8 total heading into Boston. The Bruins have a 3.2. Leafs played last night. They won 2-1 in overtime. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen had a good game. I mean, that game was just atrocious. It was low event city. Golofsson scored, but that game was just brutal. It took overtime for the Leafs to win there. Now they're going back-to-back on the road into Boston. Like, I don't know. I really don't hate the Leafs tonight, but it's not like I'm going to be running out to play them. You know what I mean? They're just kind of there. If you happen to get there, you get there. If you don't, you don't. You know what I mean? It's a tough matchup in Boston. Like 0.3% ownership for the Matthews line or 21,000, which is the issue. But like anytime that line is super low, one-offing Matthews is fine. It is March 7th, and Matthews has 54 goals. He's on pace for 75 goals. He's probably going to get there. So one-offing Matthews, completely fine. You want to stack that second line, Domi, Bertuzzi, Nylander for 16-6, be my guest. But like that's an MME play only. I think the one line that I probably would be interested in 1 to 3 or like 5 lineups would be that Boston top line, Pastrnak, Zacha, Heinen. There's not great power play correlation there, but the Leafs blue line is bad. Their goalies have been a mess. Pastrnak can break a slate whenever he wants. He has pretty good numbers with Danton Heinen. Pavel Zacha has actually been doing stuff recently. I'll pump the brakes on my hate for him. Yes, we'll address that. But Boston 1 would probably be the only line I'd be interested in 1 to 3 or 5. Like they're on my list. Will I get there in single entry? Probably not. But it's not like it's an auto cross out for me. So this is mostly an MME game for me.
Yeah, I'm not too high on Toronto either here tonight. Road back-to-back, 2.8 total. Like there are other low-owned low-owned road spots on the board that you can get to without having to pay $21K for a top line. And you know, you and I talk about all the time when Pastrnak and Marchand are split up, it's a much better defensive Boston team. And the Boston top line with, you know, quote top line with Marchand, Coyle, and DeBrusk, 2.3 expected goals against, 1.7 actual goals against, and about 200 minutes together this year at 5-on-5. That's really good defense. One of Boston's issues had been their discipline, right? Like this was a team that was taking a lot of penalties, but basically since Christmas, it's been a downward trend. And they're at about 3.2 minor penalties per game over the last 8 weeks. That is well below the league average of around 3.5. So it's a tough matchup at 5-on-5. Toronto's not going to get a lot of power play time. I'm with you. Like there are guys that are always available for one-offs. On the Toronto side, you can one-off obviously Austin Matthews, William Nylander's also not bad. You know, Tyler Bertuzzi is getting a lot more expensive. I think I'd honestly be more into one-offings, you know, somebody from the third line, particularly Bobby McMahon or something like that, just to if you need a cheap winger. But I'm not stacking anything from Toronto. I do have some interest in that Pastrnak, Zacha, Heinen line. They don't get top line matchups. They will see a lot of that Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, William Nylander line, and that line has been bad defensively. 3.3 expected goals against, 3.5 actual goals against per 60 in 105 minutes together. If you look at just Domi and Bertuzzi together, it's roughly the same defensive numbers in about double the sample. So like with or without Nylander, it's not getting any better defensively. Now the offense is better because Nylander's really good offensively, obviously. But the defense isn't. That's a pretty good matchup for Pastrnak, Zacha, and Heinen. Not that expensive at $17K. A little bit of negative leverage at 6%, but with a minus 4.6% top two stack. But I think that's perfectly fine. The power play correlation is a problem, but Toronto's penalty kill has been improving since the All-Star break. After a little bit of a slump there around Christmas, early January. I think that Pastrnak line is the line that I like best in this game, but I kind of agree that there's no line in this game that I'm specifically targeting in single entry or 3 maxes or anything like that to go full stacking.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if I build and happen to get pieces of that Boston line in my one lineup, like it's fine. I don't think I'll get there, but like Pastrnak on this slate, I will consider. Montreal Canadiens with a 2.3 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.7. Not as much ownership as I thought on Carolina here tonight. I was expecting more on the top line. I was not expecting almost 10% on Netchus, Bunting, Drury. It makes sense, though, because they're 12,200. So they're also going to avoid that top line matchup. So maybe I'm just crazy. Because I do really like Netchus here tonight and Bunting and probably Drury if you need a cheap one off center. But like that ownership is a bit ridiculous at almost 10%. There's probably other lines in that range, like the Stahl line. That's $1,400 less, coming in at a fourth of the ownership. And yeah, they're going to see Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky. But you get Jarvis on the top power play unit there, and you get two cheap guys. Martinook is a shooter. Stahl is kind of whatever at this point. But I don't know. That ownership on Carolina 2 is a bit nitrous for my taste. I do like Carolina 1 here, though. Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen coming in at 4.6% projected. A little bit of negative leverage, but only 16.6, and they're going to see depth matchups with Montreal. And I even think they might avoid Newhook Armia, which has been a pretty good line. But again, it is Montreal. Their penalty kills pretty poopers, really poopers. Aho, Svechnikov on the top unit, Teravainen on the second unit. For the price, I will consider them if I'm making a mid-range build. You can't fit them with the Edmontons of the world, the Minnesotas, the Tampas, you know what I mean? So if you're fading the big guns, I think, for a mid-range build, Carolina is going to be near the top of the list for a mid-range type build. On the Montreal side, brutal matchup for the top line, just brutal. Going into that Stahl line, I don't want anything to do with that. So I'm out on Montreal 1. Montreal 2, if you're making like 150 and they're like the last line in there for like 2 lineups for fillers to get your expensive power play stuff in, that's fine. But like, I'm not running out to play Montreal here tonight.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in the Habs here. It's another one of those things. It's kind of like the Leafs. Like if you want to one-off one of the cheap wingers, like if you want to one-off like a Josh Roy or Joel Armia or something like that, I think that's fine. Full stacking, I don't think that's the way to go here. Like the big reason is Carolina's penalty kill. Carolina legitimately has the best penalty kill in the league. The only time they ever get into trouble is when their goaltending lets them down. And quite honestly, for at least a couple months now, at least when Kochekhov's getting the starts, the goaltending's been pretty good. So I have no interest in stacking the Habs. My interest is on the Carolina side. I wrote up Michael Bunting in the picks article today. Free to read every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. Now, on Bunting specifically, I wrote that he's up to 16.36 per game over his last 10 games. It's almost 2 minutes more than he was skating in the first 50 games of the season, 2.9 shots per game. We have seen this guy be very productive before, particularly back in Toronto. He's on the top power play unit. You mentioned the Montreal penalty kill. Montreal's, like, there are some numbers for Montreal's defensively that have been getting better. The penalty kill's not one of them. They're also taking a lot of penalties, 3.9 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. 6th most in the league and 5th most on the slate, I believe. So they've been taking a lot of penalties. Bunting's on the top power play unit. Like, I think you're fine to play Carolina too, because you do get Bunting. They are getting more minutes. It has generally been a good line, but like every Carolina line is a good line, right? Like when you look at expected goals for and against, like if there's a Carolina line that's like around league average, they break them up pretty quickly. Like that's kind of the problem playing against Carolina. But at 10% ownership, like that just feels too high. Like I don't feel confident enough in that line scoring twice, maybe getting a shot bonus or something on DK to get to value. So it's Carolina 1 for me. Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen. Since January 1st, that trio, 3.4 expected goals per 60, 3.1 actual goals per 60. They don't get the Suzuki matchup, so you're going to get the second line. And like, while this Armia line has been good offensively, they've been like league average would be generous to them defensively. Third line's nothing to worry about. So, those second, third, fourth line matchups that Carolina's top line is going to get are very, very good for them. Obviously, you get Svechnikov and Aho on the top power play unit. So you get 2 out of the 3 on the power play. That's good enough when you're facing Montreal. I do like Carolina 1 here. And I agree with you. Like, if you're not playing one of those super expensive Minnesota, Tampa Bay builds or something of that ilk, this Carolina top line should probably be near the top of your list for consideration for a couple mid-price builds. They're not coming in with all that much ownership, as you mentioned, 4.6%, 3.7% top 2 stack. Like, if you want to make it a full power play stack, take off Teravainen and put on Michael Bunting, I think you can do that. I would probably just leave them all together, though. Teravainen's a good playmaker. They get a good matchup at 5-on-5. I'd be almost more tempted to add Bunting to the stack than to take Teravainen off and replace him with Bunting is kind of what I'm getting at. So Carolina 1 for me in this game. I think, if you want to use Carolina 2 or 3 as a filler, like, I'm not going to say no. It's a good matchup for them. I just want to get as many top power play guys in my lineup as I can against a bad penalty kill, and that means Carolina 1 tonight.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.5 total heading into Florida. The Panthers have a 3.5 total. Vladimir Tarasenko traded to the Panthers. Kind of forced his way to Sunrise, it seems. That's why the return was pretty muted yesterday for that trade. So, and he's going to be sliding in on the top line with Barkov and Reinhart. Verhaeghe moves down to the second line with Tkachuk and Bennett. Now, that's an interesting spot for Tarasenko because, one, Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhart, or Erod, Barkov, Reinhart, absolutely meat grinders defensively. Tarasenko, I love Tarasenko, but he might be a top 5 worst defensive wingers in the National Hockey League. Like, he's a black hole. He is a black hole. And maybe that's why they're putting him with Barkov, because maybe they think they can, Barkov can carry him. It also gives the second line, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, Bennett has a long history of being fucking nitrous. So, like, maybe that's why they're doing it. I do worry a little bit defensively, but, like, that doesn't really matter if you're going to stack them. But Florida 2 would be my interest here. Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Bennett, 19.9, 2.6% projected ownership. You want to play with the shiny new toy, 19.3, 1.2% projected ownership, go for it. I want to wait and see because, like, when Tarasenko got traded to the Rangers last year, I cannot understand how bad defensively he is. So, like, if they're kind of hemmed in their own zone and it takes them a little while to, get that chemistry, I want the line that has a long history of being awesome. And that's Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Bennett. You get Verhaeghe and Tkachuk hopefully on the top power play unit. I would assume Tarasenko is going to be on the second unit. It's not the best power play matchup. But the thing is, like, they're going to avoid the Cates line. They'll probably see the Frost Tippett line or the Farabee Forrester. So, like, I'm fine with Florida 2 here. I'm kind of in a wait and see approach on Florida 1. On the Flyer side, I don't know, right? Because there's that unknown with Tarasenko. Like, Barkov could just automatically just keep that line afloat, right? But if they're going to see that Farabee Forrester Lawton line, might take a stab on them in MME at 13.5. But that's just kind of grasping at an unknown, and that doesn't feel great. But they're coming in at 1% ownership, so I don't mind that stab. But for me, this is a Florida 2 game.
I'll say, first of all, we have no idea what the Flyers lineup is going to look like. They had practice yesterday. I haven't seen any lines from any of their beat writers. They changed up, big surprise. They changed up their lines during their game in that shootout loss to St. Louis. And it looks like Scott Lawn's not going to play tonight. His name has been in trade talks. I think they said he was sick, so he wasn't at practice yesterday, but it looks like he's going to be held out of the game tonight. So Scott Lawn's out. They traded Sean Walker, and that takes a pretty important name out of that defense core for them. Because I mentioned in this picks article, because I actually wrote up Cam York because he's going to have to play minutes here tonight. Philadelphia is now without 4 regular defensemen. Nick Seeler's injured. Jamie Drysdale's injured. Rasmus Ristolainen's injured. and Sean Walker was traded. So that's 4. They do run 7 defensemen quite a bit. That's 4 out of their top 7 defensemen out of the lineup. It's Sanheim, York, Egor Zamula, and a bunch of guys. Like they have one good defense pair here tonight. And on top of that, Sealer and Walker were 2 defensemen that they use quite a bit on the penalty kill that has been so good this year, and they have arguably been the team's best 2 penalty killers on the blue line. On top of that, Scott Lawton, very good penalty killer, not playing tonight. Travis Konechny, I haven't seen an official update from him. They said he took contact in practice yesterday. It's usually one of the last steps to getting back into the lineup. But if he's out again, because he's missed 6 games, now you're missing 4 guys off the blue line, your 2 top penalty killers, and you're probably your 2 top penalty killing forwards. Like the Flyers are very good defensively. At a certain point, you can only lose so many players, and then things start falling apart. I don't really have any interest in the Flyers. I mean, thankfully, this is just a brutal matchup because, like, if this was like at home to like Anaheim or San Jose or something like that, I'd be like, oh man, I really wish I knew the Flyers lines. Like going into Florida, I don't have any interest. Like, so, it's another situation. Like if you get to a one-off, like Owen Tippett, we'll talk about defenseman later. Like I said, Cam York, I think is in play here tonight. So you might have to play a lot of minutes, things like that. I think that's fine. I'm not stacking the Flyers. Question is what to do with Florida. Now, 2 weeks ago, this would be a pretty bad power play spot for Florida. But like I said, it looks like the Flyers might be without their 4 top penalty killers, 2 forwards and 2 defensemen here tonight. Like that's a lot to lose. You can only plug in. Yeah, that's exactly. You can only plug and play so many guys. I kind of agree with you that if I were to stack Florida here tonight, I would play it safe and go with the Tkachuk line because we know how good that they have been, right? They are coming in with more ownership, 2.6% compared to the 2.1%, but they have a much higher top 2 stack despite being similarly priced. Florida 2 this season, 3.5 expected goals per 60, 3.9 actual goals per 60 minutes. At 5-on-5, you get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. The Flyers had been taking more penalties of late, 3.6 minor penalties taken per game. That's slightly above average, where they had for much of the season been below average. So this might be a sneaky good Florida power play spot here tonight with the Flyers missing so many guys out of the lineup. I really do like Florida 2 here. They're not quite a mid-price line at $19,900. They're a little bit more expensive than that. But if you want an expensive line, don't want to pay like $23K or whatever for Tampa and Minnesota and all those guys, I think Florida 2 is a really good target here tonight. Like I said, I think the Flyers penalty kill is going to struggle. They've been taking more penalties. Sam Ersson just hasn't been good. Like we'll talk about Sam Ersson when we have fewer games to talk about someday, but he hasn't been good. I really do like Florida 2 in this matchup.
Same. It's just a matter of like, do I want to fade Edmonton? Do I want to fade Minnesota? Do I want to fade Tampa? But that's a question that you guys have to answer for yourself because I don't even know what I'm doing yet. Let's talk about one of those expensive lines. Edmonton Oilers with a 4 total heading into Columbus. The Blue Jackets have a 2.7. Adam Henrique got traded with Sam Carrick to the Oilers. They said they wanted some top 6 scoring. They have that on the third line with Warren Fogle. Warren Fogle and Leon Draisaitl have excellent numbers together. So let's go get Adam Henrique. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, what can you say here about Edmonton, right? They're going to see the Boone Jenner, Gaudreau, Roslovic matchup, the McDavid line. That line's good offensively, terrible defensively. I will say with Nugent Hopkins back up there instead of Draisaitl, you actually can stack them. They're 23-6. They're like 26 and change with Draisaitl there. Fully correlated on the power play. Whatever. Like, you want to play them? You play them. 5.1% projected ownership, heavy positive leverage on a McDavid line on a 12-game slate. Like, yeah, sign me up. What else do you want me to say? There's nothing else to say. It's just a matter of, can you play Edmonton 2 without McDavid? And I'm not sure because this is an excellent power play spot. Like, yeah, can Kane and Henrique get there with Draisaitl? Sure, but like it just feels like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face if you're leaving off McDavid in this matchup. So Edmonton won for me. And it's not like Edmonton's too super cheap. You know what I mean? They're 18-1. Carolina won is 16-6. So I'm in on Edmonton 1, Edmonton power play. You want to play Edmonton 2 without McDavid? You know, strap on your boots and hope you thread the needle. On the Columbus side, I don't have a ton of interest here. Like, you can say what you want about Henrique. He's still a pretty good two-way player. Fogle down on the third line. Like, they are getting deeper, which is something Edmonton has had an issue with years prior. So, like, I don't have a ton of interest in Columbus. If I had to pick a line, it would be Jenner, Gaudreau, Roslovic. They have a 2.7 total. I don't know. Like, that line has been very, very good offensively. It's just a matter of they're not very good defensively, and they're going to see a lot of McDavid, which is a problem. But I don't have a ton of interest in Columbus here tonight.
So, yeah, I did write up Connor McDavid in the picks article, you know, kind of chalk, but whatever. It's specifically because of the power play matchup. Now, we talked on Tuesday about how the Oilers have been drawing fewer power plays, and it is insane. A 2.9 minor penalties drawn per game. 2.9 minor penalties drawn per game over the last 8 weeks. The only team drawing fewer is Vegas. Like, Chicago and San Jose are drawing more power plays than Edmonton. Like, that's just insane. But they don't need a lot of opportunities here tonight to just murder this Columbus penalty kill. Since Christmas, Columbus, most goals against per 60 on the PK. We thought things might get better when Boone Jenner was back in the lineup. 18 games since Boone Jenner's return, still dead last in goals per 60 in that span. Like, these guys, aren't killing penalties whatsoever. And we know how good Edmonton's power play is. Like you said, with Draisaitl down on the second line now, that top line's actually playable, and you can actually like put a secondary stack with them, like an $11,000 or $12,000 line. It's actually possible. It's a good 5-on-5 matchup, but yeah, I really do like Edmonton 1 here. There are a handful of expensive lines kind of in that price range. Minnesota, Tampa Bay. Toronto's a little bit cheaper, so they're not quite there, but Minnesota and Tampa Bay in particular, it's just a matter of like which matchup you want to go with. I think we'll talk about Minnesota later. I think I would prefer to play Minnesota, but if you look at the ownership and top stacks between those three lines, like there's not a lot separating them. Ownership basically the same, top stacks within 3% of each other. Like there's just not a lot separating those three lines. I think I would prefer Minnesota here tonight, but we'll talk about them later. But yeah, Edmonton's certainly fine here. I'm not super jazzed about Edmonton too.
Too expensive.
And like I agree with you. Like I think Henrique is a solid player. I honestly don't think he's any better than Warren Fogle at this point of Henrique's career. And you look at that you look at that price range, like between 18 and 20K, you have both Florida lines. You have Nashville to talk about later. You have a Vegas line that's very playable. New Jersey lines that are a little bit cheaper. Like there are just other spots I would rather go. So Edmonton 1. What I will say is that Edmonton's second line with Draisaitl and Kane there, when they don't have Nugent Hopkins or Warren Fogle, the defensive numbers are pretty bad, like north of 3.0 expected goals against per 60. I think there's something there to looking at the Columbus middle six, whether you want to go with the Marchenko line, whether you want to go with the Sillinger line. The Sillinger line's kind of been getting more ice time. I don't know how many more times we can go to the Cole Sillinger, Alex Nylander, Alex Texier well and have it pay off. This has been happening way too often over the last week or so. They have been, Sillinger, Texier, 3 expected goals, 3.3 actual goals per 60 in their time together. Like they have put up good offensive numbers, and I'm not worried about that. Like Draisaitl, Kane are not good defensively. Like I don't know if Henrique is enough to drag them up there. I guess we'll find out. I'm not targeting them specifically. It's more like if they show, it's kind of like what you said earlier with Toronto or, with Montreal or whatever. Like if they show up in your crunches, I don't think you just have to throw them away. But I also don't think it's that bad of a matchup for Columbus too. But yeah, I like Edmonton 1 best in this game.
Yeah. I ran out of things to say about Edmonton 1 before American Thanksgiving. So I try to just make some shit up. But because you just, they're in play every slate that they're on. Sign up.
At least they're starting to get a little bit deeper, so we can start talking about second and third lines. And with not taking a lot of power, not getting a lot of power plays, they are a little bit more relevant. It's just how do you say don't play them against Columbus? Like, come on.
And I know you said that you prefer Minnesota, and they're around the same ownership. I am confident that McDavid on his own will be the highest owned of those 6 players. For whatever it's worth. Sign up using the link in the chat to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. Player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and access to the premium Discord, which you now need a membership for. You get tons of sharp members in there. Cliffy and I are always in there. Jake's in there. He's usually, talking about his Dairy Queen order. Must be nice to be in your 20s and eat blizzards every night and lose weight. But yeah, you can sign up using that chat link. It supports us directly, and you get access to all the data that we show on the show 24/7. St. Louis Blues with a 2.8 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 2.6. The Blues wanted to play St. Louis 1 here tonight. They swap Buchnevich and Saad. Why? I feel like that Chappelle skit. Because fuck them. That's why. There's no reason to do that. But here we are. Kyrou, Thomas, Saad on line 1. Buchnevich, Shen, Neighbors on line 2. I don't even know what I want to do with the Blues. I guess you could just play old St. Louis 1 and call it a day. But I understand maybe from a real life hockey perspective, putting Buchnevich on the second line could stabilize them defensively. It won't, but it could. It could. Saad's fine, but Buchnevich, Thomas is an excellent playmaker. Buchnevich is an excellent two-way player, and Kyrou is an excellent scorer. Keep them together. You're not going anywhere this season. I don't know. That kind of takes me out on St. Louis, even though it's a pretty good matchup. I guess you can still power play stack and go old St. Louis 1. From an offensive standpoint, I don't even mind Shen, Buchnevich, Neighbors, but are they going to stick together the whole the whole game? They're going to get their ass beat by whoever they're matched up with, even though the Devils suck. You know what I mean? So I think it would just go with an old St. Louis 1 power play stack and hope they get back together. But I'm really sour on the Blues now after that coaching bonehead decision. On the Devils side, it's now a bit more interesting, right? Because you take Buchnevich off the top line, you put Saad there. That's a big downgrade. So I have more interest now in the Heischer, Toffoli, Meyer line. They're 17-6. They're up there with Carolina 1 for me. The one thing I will say is, if you are playing Toffoli, just be careful. They might hold him out. They might trade him. You never know. Just be aware. So I'm good with both of the Devils' top 6 lines now, which kind of sucks because they're getting pretty heavy ownership, and I didn't really want to play them, but they have a high total, and the Blues messing up their lines just makes me mad. But what also makes me mad is the Devils coach. He's an absolute banana head, scratching Nemec again. But it's a good matchup for Heischer, Toffoli, Meyer, so I'm in on them. You want to play the Jack Hughes line, be my guest. They're $2,900 more expensive, so I'll take the savings and go with the Nico line.
Yeah, I am kind of frustrated by this. I was really looking forward to playing St. Louis here tonight. I thought it was a really good matchup, especially if they keep scratching Nemec for whatever reason. I am at my wit's end with the New Jersey Devils. I wrote about Alex Holtz at a different website. If you saw that the line mates that Alex Holtz has had over the last 2 years, I'm surprised he hasn't asked for a trade yet. it's honestly embarrassing what they're doing to that franchise. I don't want to go too overboard. I think they got to start cleaning house, and it's got to start in the front office. That's neither here nor there. St. Louis's top line with Brandon Saad there, I'm not super into it. Pavel, like you mentioned, Pavel Buchnevich's two-way play, but I don't want to take away from how good he is offensively, because not only is he good like at both ends of the ice, he's both a good playmaker and a good goal scorer. Like, he's not super elite at either, but just being very good at both those things brings a dimension that keeps defenses on their toes a little bit. And that's not a guy that Brandon Saad is. Brandon Saad can pop goals. Once upon a time, he was really good defensively, but that's about it. Like, he's not a good playmaker. He's not great transition or anything like that. It sucks because it's a pretty good matchup. You know, Hischier and Meyer, 2.9 expected goals against, 3.7 actual goals against. It's a pretty good matchup for St. Louis 1. I just don't have a lot of interest in St. Louis anymore. I think they're still playable, but they went from a line that I was probably going to have in my single entry here tonight to a line that I don't think I'm even going to consider at all. Let's just kind of put it that way. Like, without Buchnevich, the top line's goals go from 3.1 goals per 60 minutes to under 2. You know what I mean? Like, when your goals get cut by like 37% or something like that, like, no, I don't have interest in that for DFS. On the New Jersey side, like, Brad Holla and Hughes, paying over $20,000 for a line with Eric Holla at center is one of those things that you kind of have to say out loud to realize how ridiculous it is.
Same thing when I was talking about Charlie Coyle. It just feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, I get wanting to play them. That Brad and Hughes have not been scoring. Like, I just talked about how the St. Louis top line drops under 2 goals per 60 without Buchnevich. Brad and Hughes are under 2 goals per 60 themselves this season. Now, they're creating a lot more than that. They're generating a lot. They're just not scoring a lot. St. Louis doesn't take a lot of penalties. I'm going to be honest, this is kind of like Toronto-Boston, where there are some players that interest me from a one-off perspective, like as long as Toffoli plays, like I have interest in him as a one-off. Jordan Kyrou, just because of how much he usually shoots, is a guy that always interests me as a one-off. I don't know if I have a lot of interest in stacking either side here.
Yeah. And since we're on the subject of Buchnevich, if the Rangers are going down the Jake Gensel rabbit hole with a first and a prospect, just go get Buchnevich. You know he plays well with Kreider, and there I go again. Here we go. Washington Capitals with a 2.7 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 3.3. Chalk Pittsburgh again. Almost burned us the other night. Here's okay. It's Crosby, Raquel, Eller, Malkin, Riley Smith, Valtteri Puustinen. And then for the Washington side, it's Ovechkin, LaPerriere, Protas, Wilson, Pacioretty, McMichael. Then Strome, Milano, Miro, Shinchenko. I hate this game. This game sucks. And it sucks because now you have to kind of think about Pittsburgh. But, like, neither of these line combinations do anything for me. Like, if anything, it would be the Malkin line, but, like, Malkin's not even on the top power play unit. Smith isn't on the top power play unit. And they're coming in with more ownership. They're 12-6. So it's like an ownership thing here. You want to go back to Crosby line at 10.7%. Like, these are two really bad teams. I don't love either side. If I had to choose a side, it would probably be the Caps because they're coming in with way less ownership. Would you rather play Malkin, Smith, Puustinen at 11.1%? Or Ovechkin, Protas under 1%, or Wilson, Pacioretty, McMichael at 2.5%. I have faith in McMichael, Pacioretty that they're going to play at least decent. So that would be the line for me. out of any line in this game. But if you want to play Pittsburgh, I understand. It's just like I cannot go back to the chalk Pittsburgh well. I don't even love Washington in this spot. It's just like if I had to pick a line, it would be that one. If it was up to me, I would just throw a big red X through this game and move on.
Yeah, I will say that the lines that I'm most interested in are both second lines. Pacioretty and McMichael, they did have good numbers with Anthony Mantha. Obviously, Anthony Mantha's in Vegas now, so that changes things. I don't have a lot of faith in Tom Wilson. But we talk all the time about how McMichael plays very well off the rush. Max Pacioretty can still score. I know he went like 17 games or something like that without a goal after scoring in game 2 following his return. It was something like that, but he still shoots. He can still score. That's something. So I think they're playable. Pittsburgh too, that Malkin line is up over 90 minutes together, 3.1 expected goals per 60. So they have been generating, and I'm not worried about the defensive matchups at all whatsoever from the Washington side. Like, it doesn't matter which line they actually go out against. So I think I agree with you. I'd rather play Wilson, Pacioretty, McMichael over the Malkin line just because of the ownership. I do think the Malkin line has a better chance of being a better line just because we've actually seen them play well. Like Pacioretty and McMichael actually do have a sample without Mantha, and it's not that good. And I can't imagine Tom Wilson's going to make it better. It is both second lines. Like, I do have the Pittsburgh second line graded higher. It's just the ownership is really, really high. I guess I would play Pittsburgh too, but I kind of agree with you. There's nothing in this game from a stacking perspective that is really attracting my attention.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's going to be a national game in the United States, and they're going to frame it Crosby versus Ovechkin. We're going to have to suffer through it tonight. Calgary Flames with a 3 total heading into Tampa. The Lightning have a 3.5 total. The Flames have been busy. They traded Noah Hanifin yesterday. They traded Tanev. They traded someone else too.
Well, they traded
Elias Lindholm. Yeah. But you noted this morning in DMs, those were 1, 2, 3 in terms of time on ice for their penalty killers. That's not good.
No, that's not what you want if you're Calgary.
That's what you don't want to see, especially with Tampa Bay on the other side of the ice, especially with Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos together. 5.5% projected ownership. Like, there's not
and also, like, just to cut you off real quick, sorry, but Connor Zari's hurt and Martin Pospisil's out. So,
he's suspended.
Yeah, so with Lindholm traded, like, they brought in Kuzmenko, but like, that guy's been healthy scratched. He sucks. Like, he's an empty roster spot. They've effectively removed an entire forward line and an entire defense pair, including their 3 most used penalty killers, from the lineup compared to 6 weeks ago. It's like the Flyers. At a certain point, you can only lose so many players before your team just blows. And I'm wondering if Calgary hasn't reached that point.
Yeah, and they called up Coronado and Jacob Peltier, both whom I like. They will not help the penalty kill.
No.
So I'm very much in on Tampa 1 here. There's no matchup coming back to me from Calgary that I'm concerned about. They're not gonna go out against the Backlund Coleman line, I don't believe.
No. That's kind of why we like them.
I have enough faith in Cooper that he won't do that. Some other coaches, I wouldn't, but like Cooper is smart enough to keep them away. If they get the Kadri Kuzmenko Peltier matchup, like, they're gonna crush them. Sharon Govich, Huberdeau, Coronado, they're gonna crush them. You know what I mean? So there's not really much that I'm worried about for Tampa 1. They're coming in similar ownership to Edmonton 1, similar ownership to Minnesota 1. So you make that call yourself, but this is a much better power play spot than it was even 3 weeks ago. So in on them. If you want to go to Tampa 2 as a filler, fine. But like, I want to prioritize the power play guys. Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, Hedman. If it's Paul, it's Paul. If it's Cirelli, it's Cirelli. You know what I mean? But Tampa 1 for me. on the flip side, it would probably be that Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line because they're going to get – it's not like Tampa has a good defensive line. You know what I mean? Like Cirelli and Hagel, probably pretty good, but Mitchell Chaffee there, I don't know. So it would be that Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line for me. So in on Tampa 1, Calgary 3, if you want to classify them as Calgary 3.
Yeah, I'm not going to go long on Calgary here. That's another team to put in the if I get a one-off from them, fine, but I'm not stacking them bucket. Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane would be the line. They're at 3.1 expected goals, 2.9 actual goals per 60 since the All-Star break. I got to assume, like, when you're effectively missing 3 forwards because of trades, injuries, and suspensions, that line probably gets a decent amount of ice time here tonight. Like, they're not going to run out Kevin Rooney 14 minutes, I don't think. I mean, who knows with this team, but I don't think. Kuzmenko only gets like 11 minutes. Coronado doesn't get a lot of ice time. Pelletier's not going to get a lot. Like, I could see that Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line playing like 20, 21 minutes here tonight. I still don't have a ton of interest in playing them. But again, if we get there for one-offs or something like that, I think it's fine. It's Tampa that I like best, and it's not even close. That Tampa 1 line, 3.7 goals per 60 minutes in 190 minutes together since Christmas. Like, they started slow, which is why Stamkos didn't play a lot on that top line leading up to Christmas. Been there a lot more often over the last like 30 games or whatever. They do go out against second and third line, so they're not going to go up against Backlund, Coleman, Mangiapane, and like the rest of that Calgary lineup. Like, I like Nazem Kadri a lot. He's not a great defensive center, and there's no one else to carry the defensive burden on those second and third lines. Like, there is no one, especially with Zary and Pospisil not in the lineup. So with the defenseman missing on top of that, I just think it's a tremendous matchup for Tampa Bay. We showed the ownership earlier. I'll bring it up again. Only 5.5% on that Tampa Bay top line, 22.5% top 2 stack. All 3 on the top power play unit. Like you said, Calgary missing their top 3 penalty killers, or not missing, they're just gone from the franchise now. Calgary's defensive numbers had been on a little bit of a slide anyways at 5-on-5. I was looking at their numbers from the last, just since the All-Star break. They're basically like middle of the league, where there were times like they were top 10. I just think it's a tremendous matchup for Tampa Bay. I would rather play Tampa Bay here tonight than Edmonton, I think, just because Tampa Bay has the home matchup. I really like Tampa 1. They're one of my favorite lines on the entire slate here. This is a Tampa game all the way for me.
Yeah, agreed. Buffalo with a 2.9 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 3.5 total. Buffalo played last night, lost in overtime to the Leafs. Nashville made a couple moves today. They traded for Beauvillier. They claimed Jared Anderson Dolan off waivers. I don't think either of them are going to be playing tonight. Nice depth pickups for them, though. If Beauvillier is going to succeed anywhere now, it's in Nashville. Could be a nice little Novak Evangelista Beauvillier line, but that's just me dreaming. Obviously, Buffalo traded for Bowen Byram. They're expecting him to play on the top pair tonight. Now, they have a third line of Krebs, Benson, Victor Olofsson. They played 9 minutes last night. Poto, Gurgle-Shits, and Eric Robinson played like 17. So if you're thinking, third line of Krebs, Benson, Olofsson for 7,800, have fun with those 8 minutes. You know what I mean? They're going to play the Okposo line a lot more. I do really like Nashville 1 here again. Not as good of a matchup as it was going against Montreal, obviously, but Buffalo back-to-back on the road. They've had their issues all season. Like, Bowen Byram on the top pair is interesting because, like, that is an electric offensive top pair with Dolan and Byram, but I cannot imagine they're going to be good defensively off the jump. I like Nashville 1. I'm going to throw them in that mid-range bucket. I'd much rather play Florida, but I do think Nashville 1 is definitely playable. And again, every time Nashville's on the slate, it's like, they're getting insane save percentages behind Nashville 1. Thompson, Tuck, Skinner, they've had their issues this year. They're $200 cheaper than Nashville 1, coming in at half the ownership. Don't mind taking a stab on them in MME, but, I'm not like running out to play them because they're back-to-back on the road. It's a 12-game slate. Buffalo's selling anything that can move. So I don't know. Like, I think they're fine in MME. I'm not prioritizing them. I think Cousins, Paterka, Greenway is a fine filler line, but again, not running out to play Buffalo here. Nashville 1's my favorite in this game.
Yeah, the problem with Buffalo is like I would probably just find $1,000 and go play Florida, or go play one of the New Jersey lines. Probably rather play, just dive down and go play the Pasternak line from Boston. Like, that's just kind of the problem. Is like I think there are other spots to go to, and they're not really scoring. Like, they're not really even generating a whole lot. 2.7 expected goals per 60 since January 1st. The league average is like 2.56 or 2.57. That's barely above league average. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not really doing anything. The Nashville penalty kill isn't elite or anything, but even the Buffalo power play hasn't been that good. It's just kind of the problem with me playing Buffalo. Like, eventually one of these top lines is going to fill the net behind Saros. He's just riding way too hot. It just, on a 12-game slate, when there are other similarly priced lines that I would much rather play, it just feels tough to play Buffalo 1. Buffalo 2, they got some ice time last night. I noticed JJ Paterka was up over 18 minutes, which is nice. They're not giving him like 12 minutes a game or whatever they were giving him for some reason. Him and Cousins have been fine on the second line without Jack Quinn, 2.6 expected goals per 60, but that's not that great. I think this is a Nashville game for me. It would be going back to the Nashville top line that I have the most interest in. 4.3% ownership. That's perfectly fine against a 6.3% top 2 stack percentage. So I do think they are in play, especially where Buffalo's penalty kill. They had been allowing a lot of shots. They hadn't necessarily been allowing a lot of goals, but now the goals are starting to go in. The penalty kill has not been very good. Brian O'Reilly has lived off the power play this season. I really do like Nashville 1. It's not a really good 5-on-5 matchup. Like, Buffalo is actually a good 5-on-5 team. It's just their power play and penalty kill suck. So that's why I think I would rather focus on Nashville 1 than dig into the depth. Like, Novak Evangelista Jankowski is playable. 2.7 expected goals, 2.5 actual goals. But, like, they don't get a ton of ice time, 13, 14 minutes. None of them on the power play. I think in this game, for me, it's Nashville 1 or move along.
Yep. Concur. If you didn't know, UFC 299 is this weekend. Excellent card. I will be recording my MMA quick picks video tonight. It will be up on my Twitter after NHL Lock tonight. Appreciate the support, the feedback. I know I haven't had it in the past few weeks. Been sick, kids have been sick, et cetera, et cetera. No excuses as I list excuses, but the video will be out tonight. So I appreciate your support and feedback on that. Go check it out. MMA sims are amazing. If you want to dip your toes into some MMA, MME, follow that link in the chat and sign up. Minnesota, wild with a 3.2 total heading into Arizona. The Yotes have a 2.8. Marcus Foligno is out tonight. And Brandon Duhaime got traded, so they're a little bit short-handed here. I'm sure they'll call up some people to fill in the lineup. I don't think it really affects DFS that much. It might actually help Kaprizov, Eriksson, Ekboldi. You're going to see a boatload of minutes. This is an excellent 5-on-5 matchup. This is an excellent power play matchup. They are the most expensive line on the slate at 23.7, which is kind of insane with a McDavid line and a Tampa line, but that just speaks to how good they've actually been. So I'm very much in on Minnesota 1. I know Arizona went with Keller, Genther, Cooley last game, but they moved Keller to the top line in the third period, and we did not get Arizona lines. I would have some interest in Arizona. I just need to see the lines. They're all kind of similarly priced, at least. I mean, Keller, Schmaltz, Hayton would be the most expensive, so maybe you build like that and react to it. But I don't know. It is Marc-Andre Fleury in net, and the penalty kill isn't great. So, like, if it is Keller, Schmaltz, Hayton, I would have interest there. If it's Keller, Genther, Cooley, would have some interest there. It's just a matter of we don't know what they are.
Yeah, we don't know the lines. And the thing is like this is a good power play matchup for both teams, right? Minnesota's penalty kill, very bad. Arizona's penalty kill, even worse. Both teams have been taking a lot of penalties. Arizona 4.5 minor penalties per game over the last 8 weeks. Minnesota is at 4.1. Those are two of the most penalized teams in the league. Second and fifth minor penalties per game taken in the last 8 weeks. They're also both drawing a lot of power plays. Minnesota at 4.4 per game is second in the league, only behind Florida over the last 8 weeks. Arizona is also in the top 10. Like there could be a lot of power plays in this game here tonight. So that's kind of why I feel all right just playing Keller, Schmaltz, and Hayton if I'm playing on the Arizona side, because they are all on the top power play unit. So at worst, if they're not together in warm up, you'll still get a power play stack out of them. And it's a much better power play matchup than it is a 5-on-5 matchup for Arizona. So if they get there, it's probably through the power play anyway. Arizona won. They're only shooting 6% with Hayton as the center, which is weird because they were really, really good offensively. Like they're still generating 2.8 expected goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're just not finishing. And it's kind of weird because I was looking at their playmaking numbers earlier. Their playmaking data is all really good too. It feels like they're genuinely snake bitten. And we've seen with this Arizona team, just flip a switch and they all of a sudden that line is shooting 14% for a month. Like we have seen that a lot. So I actually don't mind Arizona 1, Hayton, specifically Hayton, Schmaltz, and Keller in this matchup. Yeah, the Minnesota side is the side that I do like best. I wrote up Kirill Kaprizov in the picks article. I mentioned like because like Nathan McKinnon's been so hot and Kucherov's been great all season. Matthews, like you said, on pace for over 70 goals. Like Kaprizov's turnaround has been kind of understated a little bit. He has 40 points in his last 26 games and 3 hat tricks. Like I remember 2 of them. I didn't know he had 3 hat tricks in 26 games. That's absolutely nuts. That Minnesota line has been tremendous. 3.6 expected goals, 5.4 actual goals per 60 in their time together since John Hines took over. Arizona's not been that bad defensively, but the goaltending has taken a turn for the worse. Like Ingram has not been good. Vejmelka's had some bad games. I really do like Minnesota 1. I think I prefer them to Edmonton, but now that I've talked it out with you on the show, I think I prefer Tampa Bay over Minnesota. So that's kind of where I am, Tampa Bay, then Minnesota, then Edmonton. But I do like both top lines. And when I say top line for Arizona, I mean specifically Hayton, Schmaltz, and Keller. For the Minnesota depth, there's just not a lot. Like they're missing players. There's not a lot to play with. For me, it's one of those games where I'm focusing on the top lines or I'm not stacking anything.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like Arizona. You know what I mean? It's a good power play matchup. They have a ton of their depth guys out, so could get a pretty low-owned combo if we get a good line in warm-ups. Vancouver Canucks with a 3 total. Heading into Vegas, the Golden Knights have a 3 total. Anthony Mantha got traded to Vegas yesterday, as did Noah Hannafin. Anthony Mantha is going to slide into the second line with Carlson and Stevenson. Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev, the top line. Noah Hannafin was running power play 2, for whatever that's worth. I mean, people get mad at Vegas doing this every year, but like any team can do this. It's the same CBA. The Leafs started this, and they get mad.
And I will say, maybe there's been some shenanigans in the past with like playing with timelines with injuries and stuff. you can't really, like, Mark Stone is a ruptured spleen. You know what I mean? It's not like it's like a pulled hamstring and it's like, oh no, I need another week or something like that. Like, the guy's spleen's ruptured. Like, you can't really, kind of fake that or drag that along. It just worked out for them in this specific instance, and now they're loading up for another cup run.
Yeah. And they still have their first round picks this year and next year, so they could be players for like Gensel or Toffoli.
I like how every team's like, no, we don't want to mortgage our future or whatever. And Vegas is like, we are trading everybody to make our team as good as possible right now. Okay.
They won a cup last year. They're going to be in a prime position this year. The West is poopers, so there's not any ownership in this game. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not sure how Mantha's a massive, like, Vegas is just big. Not big like the Leafs, like donkeys. Like, they're actually big, skilled players. And Jonathan Marchessault, poor little guy. He's looking up when he's trying to. He's a tiny fella, but everyone else is enormous. I'm not really sure. Like, I don't know. I kind of don't mind Carlson, Stevenson, Mantha as a filler, but my favorite line in this game is Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev. I don't think I'm going to be prioritizing any of these lines in single entry or three lineups. They're more MME. I think, Vegas 1's fine. Vegas 2 is fine. I think, the Pettersson line is fine at their price, 14.5. JT Miller Besser is always fine because no one plays them. But again, this is more of an MME game for me.
I kind of have interest in Carlson, Stevenson, Mantha for this reason. Like, Mantha's not a great playmaker, but Chandler Stevenson, he usually is. This season's been kind of rough, but he usually is. William Karlsson is also a really good playmaker, and he's actually having a good season, and he's also scoring goals. I suspect Eichel is going to see quite a bit of the JT Miller line, and the Elias, it's weird. Elias Pettersson's lines always have like good expected goals against numbers, but bad goals against numbers at a certain point. It's not just a small sample because it seems like it's happening almost year after year. I don't mind Carlson, Stevenson, and Mantha as a filler here tonight. I'm not like building my lineup around them or anything, but if you're looking at one of those Florida lines at 19K or Toronto at 21K or something like that, and you want a filler line, but one that's not necessarily like, $9,000 that might, like you said, get 9 minutes or 8 minutes or something, I think Vegas 2 fits that bill, especially where 2 out of the 3 guys are going to be on the top, like almost certainly on the top power play. I don't think I don't think Mantha's going to jump up and take anybody's spot. The reason is Vancouver's been taking a lot of penalties, 4.1 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. That's 4th in the league in that span and 3rd of all teams playing here tonight. Not having Mark Stone is still a ding to the power play, but at least you get 2 of the 3 guys on the power play. I don't mind Vegas 2 here. I don't have a ton of interest in Vegas 1 going up against JT Miller. They still are pretty good defensively, regardless of the third wheel on that line. For me, it is Vegas 2 that I have the most interest in. I don't have any real interest in Vancouver. One of the reasons is like going up against that Eichel line isn't a great matchup. The other is Vegas isn't taking any penalties, and it's getting kind of ridiculous at this point. Vegas is at 2.1 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. Chicago's the next closest team at 2.4, and then the next closest team's at 2.9. Like, they're taking something like 40% fewer penalties than the 3rd next least penalized team. Like, they're just not going to the penalty box at all. And if Vancouver doesn't get there on the power play, it seems kind of unlikely they get there all at 5-on-5. So I think I do like Vegas 2 with Mantha there. It's the only line that I like out of this game.
Yeah, and I was just looking. Noah Hannafin is confirmed in. He'll be on a pair with Pietrangelo.
These guys, man, you got to respect it. Like, you got to respect it.
Yeah. Oof. Ottawa Senators with a 2.8 total heading into LA. The Kings have a 3.7. Ottawa lost to the Ducks last night. Gutless performance. Chabot is out tonight. Highmore is out tonight. I don't even know who's in. Someone named like Smeagol is in on the fourth line. I don't know. They have Hermione's cat and they have the fucker from Lord of the Rings. I don't really know the Ottawa lines because they moved Batherson around. They flip-flopped him with Ridley Greig. But I don't think I'm going to be targeting Ottawa here tonight. So if you are, stay tuned for warm-ups at 10:30 p.m. Eastern or 10 p.m. Eastern. Whew. I really do like Fiala more Deneau, but they're the highest projected own line on the slate at 16,000. It's interesting because you can't fit them with Edmonton, you can't fit them with Tampa Bay, and you can't fit them with Minnesota. So I guess they're the chalk of the mid-range builds. They're fine, but for $600 more, I can get, Carolina one for a fifth of the ownership. So, like, LA2 is in a great spot here. Don't get me wrong, but 18.7% projected ownership on a 12-game slate is a bit wild. It doesn't feel like awful chalk, though, because they just exploded on Sunday, and they have excellent expected goals numbers. So if you want to eat it, there's plenty of ways to get different. I don't have a ton of interest in the top line at almost 10% with a 1.9% top two stack with Turcotte there. Like, he just does not shoot. He's just there. And then you have Pierre-Luc Dubois and Alex Laferriere. Like, Jared Aaronson Dolan's not there anymore. Maybe they play. I mean, they won't.
They said I saw a tweet that came out like 10 minutes ago. They said Los Angeles is going 11-7 and dressing Arthur Kaliev. So Kaliev is going to be in the lineup, but they're going to have 11 forwards and not 12.
Yeah, so he'll play like 6 minutes. Fun. Yeah, it's like LA2 or bust in this game, and it's just a matter of if you want to eat the ownership. I'm out on Ottawa. If you want to play Ottawa, just hang out until 10 p.m. for the line rushes.
Yeah, throw another team to throw in if there's a one-off, like Ridley Greig, I guess, makes a decent one-off, assuming he's on the second line. Brady Tkachuk is always in play as a one-off, but the Los Angeles top line, even without Adrian Kempe, 1.7 expected goals against, 1.5 actual goals against. The Los Angeles second line, 2.2 expected goals against since the All-Star break. They haven't been on the ice for a goal against since the All-Star break. It's been a month. And like, that's how good the Kings second line has been. It's really kept their playoff chances afloat. It is Kings 2 I like best in this game, but you mentioned the ownership. It is like outrageous, 18.7% ownership, but 8.6% top two stack percentage is really high. And I think with Los Angeles going 7 defensemen, like, you can probably roster a pretty low-owned Kings defenseman here tonight to put with that stack. Like, you don't necessarily have to play Doughty for the power play. Like, you can go and play Gavrikov. You can go and play, I hate to say Spence, but yeah, Spence. Brant Clark is still listed as a winger, 4,800 on DraftKings. I really do like LA2. It's the only line that I like in this game. There's just a lot of ownership, but I'm going to be honest. Even if it's like 15 to 20% ownership on that line, I really don't care, because this Ottawa team is just really bad. And this Kings line, 3.1 expected goals, 2.9 actual goals per 60 since the All-Star game. They've been really, really good, especially over the last 4 or 5 games. So LA2 for me or nothing else.
Yeah. They have a 3.7 total with Turcotte on the top line, so it's all coming from the second line. Guy has like 3 shots since Lincoln was president. New York Islanders with a 3.6 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.4 total. New York Islanders top line up to 20,900. 8.4% projected ownership, 15.9% top two stack. I think they're perfectly fine. I'd rather play Tampa. I'd rather play Edmonton. I'd rather play Minnesota. But, they're much cheaper, not much cheaper, but like a couple thousand cheaper, a little bit more ownership, and it's the Sharks. So, yeah, if you want to play the Islanders, I think that's perfectly fine. I'm kind of interested in that second line, Pajot, Lee, Palmieri, not because they're anything good, but they're 13-2 coming in with 3% ownership, and they're going to see depth of the Sharks, which is atrocious. And Palmieri's still on the top power play. Lee is on the ice. That's bad. He gets ice time. JG Pajot is cheap. So, I don't mind that second line with that ownership as a filler spot just because the depth of the Sharks is just diabolically bad. So, Islanders top 6, perfectly fine here. I guess you could consider Sharks 1, but they're coming in negative, the highest negative leverage line in this game. Duclair has been really good, and they're 12-8, and it's a pretty good power play spot. So I guess you can consider Sharks 1, but at that ownership, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah, the Sharks 1 with negative leverage is always am I really doing this here? The Islanders, as we mentioned on Tuesday's show, they've been tremendous defensively at 5-on-5 since Patrick Waugh took over, literally one of the best teams in the league by both expected goals against and actual goals against. Penalty kill has still not been good. San Jose's power play has been bad almost the entire season, but we were talking before the show. San Jose's third in goals per minute on the power play since the All-Star break. I don't imagine that'll last very long, but they have been really good in a small sample, but I'd way rather play Islanders here. I'd way rather play the Islanders side. I wrote up JG Pajot in the picks article just because he is 3,400 and is probably going to play 17 minutes, and that Sharks middle six is an abomination defensively. It's the Islanders top line that I like best in this game, though. And you mentioned the 8.4% ownership, still very good leverage. If you look across the slate, they are fifth by top 2 stack percentage, and they're not coming in with that much ownership than the other lines, right? Tampa Bay 5.5%, Minnesota 4.5%, Edmonton 5%. This line's at 8.5%. It's not enough to keep me away from them. And the sample's starting to get there of them being really good. 2.9 expected goals for, 3.7 actual goals for. They play heavy minutes. Even against San Jose 1, 3.4 expected goals against per 60. I agree with you. I think Islanders 2 is very much in play as a filler stack here. No issue with using them. I wrote up JG Pajot in the picks article for a reason. I just think the top line's offensive numbers are starting to show that they're very playable, and the ice time has always been there, especially since Waugh took over. I really like Islanders 1 in this matchup.
Oh, yeah, me too. I played them last slate. It's just can I play them in my one lineup over the big boys of Minnesota, Tampa, and Edmonton? That is a conversation I'll have with the voices in my head after the show. Coming up after us at 5 p.m. Eastern, NBA Deeper Dive with Laffy and Josh Engelman. 6 p.m. Eastern, NBA Live Before Lockhouse with Greg Ehrenberg and former Iowa State Division I caddy Eric Lindquist. 7 p.m. Eastern, playback live stream NBA Watch Along. If you haven't checked that out, that is pretty cool. They watch the games. They talk late swap. It is NBA, though, and it's so grindy. But if you do play that, go check that out. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. Top of the board, Yossi, Dobson, Dahlin, Bouchard, Werenski, Carlson. Dobson, Bouchard, Yossi obviously stick out there. I think Dahlin's fine, but maybe I'd rather play Byram at 3,500 on that top pair, playing over 20 minutes if he's there. Don't mind Charlie McAvoy either in that top range. Sean Dursey. Who else you liking?
Yeah, Bouchard, Dobson are at the top of my list. It's not a great power play matchup for the Islanders, but it's just such a good 5-on-5 matchup for them that I really do like Dobson. But yeah, Bouchard against that awful Columbus penalty kill. I think I almost prefer playing just Bouchard by himself than stacking the Islanders here tonight. there's a lot of guys in the mid-price range that I like here on this slate, and there's usually not. I wrote up Mackenzie Weegar in the picks article, 25 minutes, over 25 minutes in back-to-back games since they traded Chris Tanev. That might actually get even higher now that Noah Hannifin's gone. And he's a peripheral machine, and he's probably going to have to put up a lot of them here tonight against Tampa Bay. Don't mind Brent Burns, obviously. Really good power play matchup for Carolina. I have Justin Falk rated very well. Brandon Goalie for the blocks on the Montreal side. Brock Faber, I know he hasn't had a lot of production in the last couple of weeks, but he's still running the top power play unit for Minnesota, and it's a really good power play matchup for them. If you don't want to pay up $5,500 for Burns, I think Brady Shea is just fine running the second power play unit for Carolina. So there's a lot of guys in that like 4 to 6K range that I like on DK here tonight, or that grade well out for me anyways. Some cheap guys as well. Yam Cork, wrote him up in the picks article. Like I said, Philadelphia's missing 4 defensemen. He's going to have to play a lot of minutes for them. He's been blocking a lot of shots as well. Oliver Shillington, he's up to 3,300, which kind of sucks, but it's the same thing as Weegar. Like Calgary's just missing, 2 really good defensemen now, and Shillington's just going to have to get more ice time. Vladislav Gavrikov, it's a really good matchup for them. It sucks that there's 7 defensemen playing. Now that there's 7 defensemen, I imagine he's not going to grade out nearly as well. Matthias Ekholm for Edmonton, like everybody's in play against Columbus. Like, let's face it. Arizona traded Troy Stetcher. Like, that's not a huge deal, but it does take a defenseman out of the lineup. So I don't mind if you need somebody super, super cheap at 2,600. I don't mind Mike Kesselring.
Yep. And because I know we're going to get this question, Noah Hannafin is listed as a Calgary Flame. He will accrue points tonight because Vegas and Calgary are on this slate.
Yeah.
So he will accrue points if you do put Noah Hannafin into your lineup.
Yeah.
Goalies. Freddie Anderson was activated, by the way, but they aren't saying if he's starting tonight. It's probably going to be Kochetkov. If we're being honest, 8,500. Calvin Pickard up there. Like Sorokin at 8,300. He needs a shutout, but like he's the cash game goalie for sure. I think Saros is okay at 8,100. I like Swayman at 7,800. And then down for the cheapies, I think Demko's fine. Like after that, like I don't know. Like Montembeault would probably be the other guy at 6,900 I'd consider playing.
Yeah. I do have Montembeault. I wrote up Jordan Binnington in the picks article. I think it's not a bad matchup going up against New Jersey. They've just struggled so much on the power play. And, Hughes, like we talked about, he's probably playing through an injury, and that takes some punch out of the lineup. I don't mind UC Saros for Nashville at home to Buffalo. Buffalo's not bad at generating shots, but they sure are bad at scoring goals. So I don't mind Saros. Those 3 guys are basically the ones that I'm focusing on. Not a lot that really sticks out to me on this slate. I think Thatcher Demko is always in play, especially on the road in Vegas. Not necessarily a bad matchup for him, but that's about it for me. I should mention a couple things. Kevin LeBanc is in with Thomas Bordeleau for San Jose. So one of the beat writers, Shank Peng, was saying he thinks that both Banoff and Duclair might not be playing tonight. So San Jose's top line might be broken up here. And Yakov Trenin was traded from Nashville. He's going to be going to Colorado. Colorado's not on the slate, so Trenin won't be accruing fantasy points here tonight.
Colorado just loading up. Anyway, who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Andrei Svechnikov.
I was going to go to Carolina too. So now I'm going to, I don't know where I'm going. I'm gonna go chalky because like I don't do that very often, but I'm gonna go Matt Boldy.
Oh, I like it. I like Minnesota tonight as well, so hopefully it works.
Yep. We will be back on Saturday. Tomorrow's the trade deadline. Hopefully there's some trades left. Hopefully your teams don't do bad stuff. They will. GMs are idiots. But anyway, good luck, everybody. We'll see you on Saturday. And hopefully you win some money on this big old slate.
Good luck tonight, everybody. I know you got to run. Oh,
Fucking
I forgot to end the stream.